Something that I've wanted to talk about for a little while now is the sort of lessons that I didn't realize that I was learning while I was working as a corrections officer. So this is 17 business lessons I learned behind bars without being an inmate. Now, I want to talk about this because I talk to a lot of people who are currently in law enforcement and they're thinking to themselves, I want to make a change, but they aren't sure where to start or if they've even got the ability to do so in the first place. But your background, the environments that you've had to operate in for the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever your career was, you've developed skills that no one is talking about in business, and I just want to change that. So to quickly touch on my background, uh, I got my start working in corrections. I worked for Cuyahoga County Jail. I was on ages 18 to 25 gang affiliated units, and I got my degree in criminology. And something that kind of changed my perspective and changed how I was going to go about the rest of my life was when I got partnered with a 27-year veteran, right? Like this guy had been through the trenches. He had done pretty much everything that there is to do at the level that he was at. And I felt like I was looking at my future and I didn't really like what I saw. And the reason why is because the more that he talked, the more that I realized that he's been here for 27 years and doesn't like anything about what he's done or what he's engaged in. And to me, that terrified me as somebody that was 24, just sort of starting his life and thinking to himself, what am I going to do next now that I've got my quote unquote big boy job? Well, that's actually what led me to start looking at opening my own businesses. And that trickled into what I'm doing now, which is running my digital marketing agency, Become the Authority. So I knew that I needed to change, right? And if you're watching this, you probably do too. So I just want to get into 17 quick little lessons that I took from working in those environments, working at that jail, and how I currently apply it to my business now. So, first lesson is that no one's coming to save you, right? The badge was going to give you the paycheck, right? But the freedom, you're going to have to build that on your own. So you have to recognize that nobody is coming to save you. This is just something you have to accept. You're on your own now, but you're capable. Now, lesson two, we're trained to endure, not to evolve. So this is something that we might have to unlearn a little bit, right? In law enforcement, you're taught that by being consistent, that pretty much guarantees survival. That's why we have procedures. That's how we have, uh, the chain of command. There needs to be consistency at every level, right? But in business, while consistency is important, it's also important to constantly evolve. That's the way you survive in business, because if you're not evolving in business, someone is likely going to surpass you because they are evolving. Now, lesson three that I took away is that violence isn't always physical. As I was working at the jail, and I'm sure all of you who have worked with the sort of people that we deal with and the kinds of situations that we bump into, and we hear about these crimes or we hear about these horrible things that are happening, and you just get angry, right? You just get angry. You get angry at the system. You get angry at yourself. You get angry at people for doing these things and making it that this is a part of your existence. It was very frustrating, right? And I had to learn to protect my mental operating system before anything else when I was working at the jail. And even now, I apply that as a business owner. Now, lesson four I took was that systems do run pretty much everything, right? Like the jail ran on triggers, routines, structures, and that's how we were able to keep problems at bay and, navigate different situations as they arose. But business has a similar sort of functionality, right? You want to start building systems for things, and that's going to make your life a hell of a lot easier if you have a system in which you operate within your own business. Now, lesson five here is that hierarchies don't appear, they shift, right? So every system you develop is going to have some kind of chain of command, but the difference is in business, you choose your role. And in a sense, you choose to be the top of the hierarchy and build out underneath you because you're bringing people into your own ecosystem. So it's important that you understand where you are in the leadership structure. You're at the very head. And if you've never been responsible for multiple things before, it might be a bit jarring for you. So recognize where you are when you make the transition to entrepreneurship. Now, lesson six, you've got to realize that you're already more disciplined than 99% of entrepreneurs, right? Like most people cannot stick to anything, but you have already existed inside of a structure. So now it's just time to aim that structure and that discipline at something that you own and something that can benefit you and your family for the future and beyond. Now, lesson number seven, you're not late, you're loaded, right? So a lot of people think that if they're starting a business late or they're trying to make a career change late, but they've been doing something for 10 years or 20 years or what have you, that it's too late to make a change. But that's not the case. In fact, you're actually prepared for what's going to happen, right? You've seen pressure, you've had to handle people, you've had to build thick skin, you've had to go through a series of very challenging situations. And as a result, things aren't going to seem so intimidating when you go through your business issues. So you're not late, you're loaded. You're loaded with experiences that are going to allow you to be stronger and navigate the inevitable pitfalls that happen with running your own business. Now, lesson eight that you have to learn is that following orders is easy, but leading yourself is kind of hard. So when you're wearing the uniform, the day is pretty structured. You know exactly where to go to check in. You know exactly where you're being assigned to. It's very systematized, right? And in business, especially when you start for yourself, there's no one watching. So you have to get in control of yourself. You have to self command, right? And that's going to be the only way that you'll move towards success. Now, lesson nine that I took away is that your mouth is your most dangerous weapon, right? Uh, in the jail, we saw it every day. One wrong sentence could just destroy everything, right? One inmate jawing to another inmate suddenly turns into a crazy violent situation, or a CO mouthing off to an inmate, or an inmate mouthing off to a CO, and now they're fighting on the banister or whatever. It's a lot, and it's the same thing in business where the words that you say and the way that you say them, it can be leverage or it can be liability. So you have to learn the language of business and be willing to speak it in a way that people understand so that you can preserve your reputation and grow your stuff. Now, lesson 10 is time blocking, which saved me inside and it helps scale outside. Like shift work really conditioned my brain. And what I mean by that is I was used to working three 12-hour shifts, right? I was used to working three 12-hour shifts in a row. And on my quote unquote long week, I would work four 12-hour shifts in a row. And so I was used to working in really short bursts for an extended period of time. meaning that now I'm going to sit down and I'm going to say, if I need to get these things done for my business, I'm going to just focus on them on Monday for 12 hours, get this project done, and it's over with, as opposed to stretching it out over 4 or 5 days just because I can. Um, I liked the work structure of just putting all of my days together, working a set amount of long hours, and then having half the week off. That really interested me, and I enjoyed that. So I was able to sort of keep that conditioning once I got into business. And you can do the same for yourself. Point is, you just need to block off times where this is when I'm working. This is when I'm doing nothing else but working. Now, lesson 11 was that situational awareness is a superpower, right? We've learned to read people, right? We watch things like body language, we listen for tonality, right? We understand how people communicate with the words that they say and the things that they do. And that same situational awareness can make you deadly in sales, team management, and client calls because you can recognize what's happening as it's happening and you can pivot or you can get in front of objections before they happen because you're recognizing that somebody might have one, right? So the situational awareness is huge and you develop it almost like a superpower working as a first responder. Now, lesson 12 was that emotional control is performance control, right? So, inside, right, you're taught not to panic. You're not going to panic, right? And you learn how to not panic while you're working inside the jail because there's always something chaotic happening. And whether you're out on the street or rushing into a fire or whatever, right? The first responders are taught not to panic and only to execute. And in business, that's going to be your edge, right? You don't have to panic. You can make things happen just by operating the same way that you always have. Now, lesson 13 is that false confidence is dangerous. Now, we know that in the streets or in the jail, it doesn't matter, it gets you hurt if you're overly confident or you make ego driven decisions. You could get yourself hurt or you could hurt someone else. And in business, it happens too, but you get broke when the false confidence is there, when the ego is there. So if you don't know something, you need to reach out and ask for help. You don't want to just hold your head up high and rush into a fire just because you're overly confident, right? Like there's better ways to pursue things. Now, lesson 14, and this is going to apply everywhere, is that rank does not equal respect. Now, we all know that to be true. You earn your trust by showing up, not just by getting stripes, right? And the same thing goes for leadership and business. People aren't going to go to war for you. People aren't going to be willing to push for you. People aren't going to really look at your business as if it's an extension of themselves, and that unless they see you showing up and being a leader, right? If they feel like you're not taking your business that seriously, they will not take your business that seriously. You understand? So it's creating the standard and holding yourself to it, and that's how you're able to build trust. So it's the same thing for business leadership. Now, lesson 15, crisis doesn't scare you, it trains you, right? So if you've managed all the chaos of the different crises that you can possibly imagine, I mean, I know with corrections, I've worked with some very vile people who have done some very vile things. And a lot of you can probably relate to that. And you can also probably relate to the fact that when vile, nasty people get together, they tend to do vile and nasty things to each other. And thus that creates crisis that we've had to manage, crisis that we've had to operate in. And while we manage that, that's building a skill. That's building a sort of hardness that allows you to problem solve under pressure, right? So you're literally built to put out the different fires that business will have. Now, lesson 16 is that the badge taught sacrifice, but not ownership. So this was a lesson about unlearning, right? Where before you were giving everything else for someone else's system, right? Like it was about building something that was bigger than yourself or being a part of something that was bigger than yourself. And you are supposed to put the whole ahead of yourself. Whereas with business, when you're in the process of trying to build your own and it's all you and it's by yourself, you need to give everything to yourself now. This is about building you bigger than yourself, right? So you don't have to join an organization that's bigger than yourself. You're now building one of your own. And last, lesson 17 is if you can survive that job, you can survive rejection, you can survive posting online, you can survive learning sales, you can survive tech. The hard part's already done. You've gone through some of the worst experiences that a person could probably ever live through. And that's the reason why people with this background relate to each other so well, or there's that unspoken understanding, is because civilians wouldn't really understand what you're being exposed to, right? So after working something like that and transitioning into working a business, suddenly going on a sales call doesn't seem so intimidating, right? So it's just about how you reframe your brain as you decide to grow as a business owner. So, you're not behind, you're prepared. You've actually got the mindset, you've got the discipline, you just need direction and a model. You just need to figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And so what I did was I just wound up actually just quitting the sheriff's office and entering a sales role. While I was in sales, I learned how to market. And then I also learned how to build automations for small business owners. And that all turned into me being able to grow my own marketing automation agency from scratch, to where now I've left law enforcement. I haven't been part of it now for about 10 years. And it changed my life. And that simple reframing, taking those lessons or reframing the parts of my mind that I needed to reframe, really helped me to grow and shape my life in a positive way. And you can do the same thing for yourself. So if this resonated with you in any way, I want you to reach out. I want you to post in the comments about your experience, what made you decide to enter business, what made you get into law enforcement in the first place. I'm new to making YouTube content. This is day 2 of putting a video out every day for the next 30 days. And I just wanted to explore something that's been really near and dear to my heart because I've talked to more and more people who want to leave law enforcement and they have the skills to be leaders in business and ultimately leaders in their community, but they just don't really have the encouragement. They don't have the support to say, you know what, I'm going to push forward. So I wanted to put this out there. Hopefully, it helps someone grow. Hopefully, it helps someone develop themselves and be better in the future. But I'm rambling. I've been Charles. It was awesome. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.